How's it going, Adam?
It's going great, Junaid. How are you?
I am doing lovely. And, I told you how excited I was to have this conversation, our prep calls. So let's actually take a step back. Before we dive into it, because there's so many questions I have to ask, just give me a quick, brief overview of what is it that your company does.
Sure. At Vivani Medical, we're developing miniature implantable devices that can go under the skin and release therapeutic levels of medicine over many months for the treatment of chronic diseases. About half of people don't take medicine as prescribed in the real world. So these fantastic clinical results that are demonstrated don't translate. So we're trying to develop a solution that will help these results translate to real people in the real world, a more convenient and easy to use solution for long-term chronic disease care.
You had big news that was announced 2 weeks ago, right? It was the positive NPM 115 preclinical weight loss data. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so with these current generation weight loss therapies, which are really taking the world by storm right now, only about 40% of people after a year of treatment are still on therapy. And when people stop taking these medications, the weight comes back, and it comes back really quickly. So we're motivated to develop an option for people that can make it easier to keep that weight off. And what we've done is we took our implants and we put them into obese mice. We had a sham implant control, and we compared it with injections of semaglutide, which is the active ingredient in the blockbuster products Ozempic and Wegovy. And what we saw was after 28 days of treatment, the weight loss was about 20% from our implant, and was also about 20% with the semaglutide injections, giving us some confidence that our product would be able to be comparable to Ozempic and Wegovy when we ultimately test this in humans as we proceed.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the active ingredient aspect of it as well. How will your product kind of compete with all the other products that are being developed by, frankly, the larger players, right? And why should investors keep your company specifically in the radar when there are larger companies that are looking to do what you're doing as well?
So that's an interesting point, Junaid, because what a lot of the companies are working on right now are new molecules that may be able to have somewhat better clinical efficacy. But for the most part, all of these new products require either a weekly injection or a daily pill. Yeah. And one of the biggest challenges with GLP-1 treatment, as I mentioned, is the medication adherence, the long-term medication persistence that very few of the big companies are actually working on at all. So we see ourselves as maybe one of the most advanced, even though we are not yet in the clinic, but we hope to be soon, working on a solution that can make sure that people can have confidence that they receive their medicine over many months at a time. So we think as our highly differentiated product in a very exciting space continues to be developed further, that we have an opportunity to be attractive to a large number of stakeholders as we move forward in our product development efforts.
Look, I'm sitting down right now, but to my left, I've got a standing desk with a treadmill, right? So weight loss and being healthy is definitely important to a lot of folks, especially if you're in meetings for so often. But I also feel like there's some challenges that come with what you're doing in terms of perception or public perception, whether it be about side effects, whether it be about, you're kind of using a little cheat code or whatever the case may be. Wrapping that up into a question, what are some challenges you expect as you go through this process, whether it's on the PR side or the medical science side of it, and how are you well equipped to take on those challenges?
I mean, you bring up some good points about, as an example, the cosmetic use of these GLP-1s. And I agree that the patients that have been studied in clinical trials for which the medications have approved indications are patients who need the medication for either morbid obesity or for being overweight with a related comorbidity. A lot of people that are taking this in the real world don't fit into those categories. And there isn't enough supply that's available for everyone that wants it right now. Yeah. So we need to make sure that the people that really need it can get it. One of the advantages with having a physician-administered implant is that once somebody receives the implant, they don't have to worry about whether that medication is going to be available for them to fill their prescription the next week or the week after, which is currently the case for many people that are on these medications, and the control of the product to make sure that it gets to the people that really need it will be more streamlined than it currently is with the injectable products and the pills that can be available generally at pharmacies. So we see what we're doing as kind of providing an important solution to an existing gap that exists that could be very helpful to all of the stakeholders in the industry as we go forward. Also, one more thing to mention is that on the idea of side effects, the implant that we are working on provides a very smooth and steady delivery of the medication. And many of the gastrointestinal effects that people experience are associated with fluctuations. That's why people need to titrate up to their ideal dosing in a very slow manner, because increases in the exposure level are responsible for the nausea and other GI effects. Once someone receives an implant, then over that entire duration, we will look in our clinical trials for signals that perhaps will have better tolerability than some of the approaches that require frequent administration that results in changing blood levels with each dose.
We had earlier on the webinar, we had Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, former chief medical officer at Pfizer, and she mentioned about equality and equity. And whenever it comes to something like healthcare, my number one concern is always, yes, now this drug, not just talking about the weight loss, but any drug is available. However, it may not be available to the middle class or low class Americans. So, as you go through this, I'm sure that's something that you'll think about as well. Since I've got you for a couple more minutes, just tell me about what's next. You had the big announcement 2 weeks ago. Where are we headed? What can folks expect in 2024 and beyond?
That's absolutely. So we have been working on a version of this implant for patients with type 2 diabetes. And then we saw this very compelling weight loss data, which motivated us to shift our strategic focus to a broader area, which is chronic weight management, in which type 2 diabetes is a part. We still intend to study the product in patients with type 2 diabetes to make it available to those patients. But we've done a lot of work to get ready to be able to conduct human testing with the type 2 diabetes version of the implant. And there is some additional preclinical data that we need to allow the version with the higher doses that will be more effective at weight loss to be tested in humans. We anticipate being in a position to submit an application to begin human testing later this year for that product. And we look forward to hopefully generating some positive clinical data in 2025. And we've seen what's happened in this sector with companies that develop positive clinical data. And we're very much excited and looking forward to how our differentiated product might be able to do something similar.
I look forward to the discovery and the milestones that you go ahead and achieve with your company. I appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you for having me.